Hey guys, how's it going? This is Waj, and this is the big one, guys. Here we're going to test out the best phablet phones you can get right now, which is the iPhone 6 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. Now, these are the two top dogs in terms of the big smartphone realm right now. So if you're interested in getting a larger phones, you're probably going to be looking at these two. They're very different in terms of internal and external architecture and design. So we're going to go between the disadvantages, go really in and out of each of the phone to see which one is going to be best for you. Now the funny thing is, this is the first time ever where we have an iPhone that actually competes against the Samsung Galaxy Note's size. Side by side, the iPhone 6 Plus, as you see over here, measures about 158.1 millimeters in terms of its height, 77.8 millimeters in terms of its width, and the Note 4 measures about 153.5 millimeters in terms of height, so a little bit less tall than the iPhone, but it is wider at 78.6 millimeters slightly. In terms of thickness, the iPhone 6 is very impressively thin at 7.1 millimeters, but the Note 4 isn't far behind, just at 8.5 millimeters. Now in terms of the weight, they're actually very similar. If you were to hold them both in your hand, you wouldn't really be able to tell which one is significantly lighter. However, the iPhone 6 Plus is slightly lighter, measuring about 172 grams versus the 176 grams that the Note 4 weighs. Now for the past couple of years, the iPhone has really been industry leading in terms of its build quality and overall design features. It's not until recently where Samsung has really upped their game with the Note 4, and this is a great example of how you can blend together years of different design cues to make something that really feels premium and high quality, and the Note 4 is certainly that example. Taking a look at the body, you can see that there's a nice metal band around it, and it just generally has definitely a better heft and overall feel that's stiffer than the last generation Note 4, and it has a much better feel at the back, very comfortable to hold. And putting both phones in the hand, you can certainly feel that the iPhone 6 Plus has just a little bit more curves than the Note 4 in terms of its overall rounder shape, since the corners, both to the front and back, are nicely curved. So the 6 Plus definitely feels very nice in the hand. The Note 4 as well feels great. I can't really decide which one feels better at this point, but both are very comfortable, even though they're very large. Now in terms of durability, obviously these are larger phones, so they're sometimes more susceptible to drops and things like that, but they both have shatter and scratch resistant glass to some extent, so in terms of minor drops you should be fine for the most part, but at a significant height those displays will definitely crack. Now recently some people have came out with videos showing that the iPhone 6 Plus is really easy to bend in your pocket or something like that, but in my experience and a lot of other experience of people who've actually used the 6 Plus on a day-to-day kind of basis, that's very difficult to do. You can bend the phone if you put a lot of force on it, but that's the same thing with the Note 4. If you put a lot of force on these larger phones, they will bend. Now another thing about design and usability, obviously the Note series has been designed to kind of use both with your fingers and the S Pen, which is Samsung's own stylus. Now the new stylus over here is a little bit thinner, it has a new design, it also matches with the particular type of color that you have. So here you can see we have a white S Pen that matches with the white Note 4 that I have over here. The other cool thing about the new S Pen that it has different levels of pressure sensitivity that's new to the pen. Basically, if you're using it for handwriting and things like that, you can get different dynamics for writing a little bit more naturally, as well as have a couple of different features depending on what kind of applications you're using. So the S Pen overall is definitely a handy tool. It's not as intuitive as using your fingers, but if you need precision, that's excellent that they still include it. Now in terms of pocketability and portability, obviously these are phablet type devices, so they're really designed for the person who loves the larger screen size, and if you can compromise the overall pocketability of it, you are going to get an amazing experience in terms of the screen. Now I have to say straight and forward, before we get into specific specification differences, looking at the displays side by side, watching videos and photos and viewing them on a day-to-day kind of basis, I do have to say both of the displays are fantastic to view. Now there's obviously advantages and disadvantages to each one, so let's get into at that, in terms of resolution, the Samsung has a slightly larger display of 5.7 inch versus the 5.5 inch on the 6 Plus, and it has a higher resolution of 2560 by 1440 with a PPI count about 515 versus the 401 PPI count on the iPhone 6 Plus, which has a 1920 by 1080 screen. Now, obviously, the resolution is a lot higher on the Note 4. Well, one thing to keep in mind that Samsung actually uses a pentile display dot matrix. So what that means, if we take a look at the displays in super high detail, you can see that the pentile display on the Samsung uses actually less amount of subpixels compared to the 6 Plus, which has a more conventional RGB dot matrix display, which certainly has a higher density in terms of the subpixel count. What Samsung is basically able to do is share different subpixels to make a one pixel. So you actually have less subpixels making a pixel, which manufacturing process and a lot of other things makes it easier, and you can get higher resolution on the display as well. Now, at this super high resolution and this crazy density level, obviously, we discussed the fact that it does have a lower subpixel count, but even with that lower subpixel count, that sheer resolution of that Quad HD screen just blows the resolution and all this technical stuff out of the water. The Note 4 is certainly the superior display. And for me, what also makes the display better is the inclusion of the Super AMOLED touchscreen technology, which Samsung has been using for quite a while. It's also in their Samsung Galaxy S5 screen. Basically, using organic LED technology, they can turn off regions of the screens that doesn't need to be on. So when you watch your movies and things like that, anything that's in black is pretty much pitch black. It's one of the best visual experience and general display technologies that's going to be further implemented in higher end TVs and further displays down the road because it has pretty much infinite contrast ratio. Now, one criticism of the Super AMOLED display compared to what the iPhone has, which is just a traditional LED backlit IPS LCD capacitive touchscreen, is that it sometimes oversaturates the colors, makes things look a little bit more hyper realistic, but you can obviously dial that down and adjust the colors accordingly. Samsung has a lot of features for it to actually adapt to the best environmental conditions. But one big thing about the new iPhone 6 Plus is that when you're viewing it outside, it has a new polarizing layer on top of that glass, so it actually eliminates a lot of reflections outdoors. So in an outdoor environment, you'll actually see that the vibrancy of the iPhone 6 Plus is really quite great. Very, very nice to use outdoors. Now, popping the hoods of these two large smartphones, you'll notice that we have a completely different architecture that's running behind these two smartphones. Basically, on the Samsung side, there are two versions of the phone. One is an 8-core Exynos processor, which consists of two quad-core processors, one clocked at 1.3 gigahertz, the other one clocked at 1.9 gigahertz. The other model is the Snapdragon Qualcomm 805 chip, which is currently right now the latest and greatest Snapdragon quad-core chip that's clocked at about 2.7 gigahertz. The iPhone 6 Plus is using their brand new Apple AA dual-core processor, which is clocked at about 1.4 gigahertz. It only has 1 gig of RAM, which is certainly fairly limited compared to the 3 gigs of RAM that we have on the Note 4. Now, even though this is a dual-core processor that's fairly conservatively clocked, when we take a look at real-world benchmarks and just using the phone on a day-to-day basis, they're both very, very fast and very efficient for their recording hardware. So on Geekbench 3, on the iPhone 6 Plus, we got a very impressive 1629 on the single-core thread and 2920 on the multi-core score. Now, up to this point, I've never seen a phone beat the iPhone 6 Plus on Geekbench 3 until we have the Note 4 over here, which is getting a very impressive 1131 on the single-core score and about 3938 on the multi-core score. So very impressive, beating out pretty much the top competition right now, making the Note 4 one of the fastest smartphones out there right now. Now, even though these are more closer to computers than phones, we still have to consider that people are still going to be making phone calls on them. And in terms of the call quality and experience, both are fairly comparable. They both have noise canceling technology to isolate your voice for better listening experience, and the speakers come out really clear. And most of the calls that I experienced on my network, the same network, delivered very reliable results each time with no call drops or anything like that. So in both regards, they're very up there in terms of call quality and call experience. Sure, they might not be the best phones to make phone calls in, but they're certainly not bad. Now, continuing forward, let's take a look at the external speaker qualities of these two smartphones and see how they sound against each other. Now let's talk about some of these special features that both of these phones offer. Starting with the one feature that they have actually in common, which is now a fingerprint scanner. The iPhone 6 Plus has probably one of the better fingerprint scanners in the market right now. The Touch ID system works really well, it's very fast, and the Note 4 also has a great fingerprint scanner in terms of most regards, but it's a little bit more finicky. You have to be a little bit more precise with it to get an accurate read. Now, since these two phones are quite large, they both have their own way of going around that problem when you're using it with one hand. We're looking at the iPhone right now, and basically if you double tap the home button, you actually see that the whole top of the screen goes down so you can easily access it with your thumb. It doesn't do anything in terms of width adjustment, just in terms of height. Now the Note 4 has its own one-handed operational features. You can basically go in the assist menu and enable this button that allows you to access a lot of different controls and different aspects about the OS using just one hand. So if you have this enabled, you can basically use a mouse cursor, zoom in, use pinch to zoom in with one thumb, and you can obviously change this to left and right hand configuration. So definitely a lot more features than what the iPhone 6 Plus has to offer. Now on the new iOS 8, if you have the 6 Plus, if you go into certain apps, you actually can enable dual pane modes where you can actually view two different items in one app, which is kind of handy and convenient and new for the iPhone lineup. It's been there in iPads for a while, so if you look at the Mail app, you can actually rotate the screen and view your inbox and your messages at the same time. One big advantage that the Note 4 has that the iPhone certainly doesn't have is a multi-window multitasking mode, which is even more advanced than last year's Note 3 series. Now you actually have both the split screen multitasking view, which is very handy. Both can be used in landscape and portrait mode. And the new feature for this year is the new pop-up window multitasking mode, which kind of works like an operating system that you have on your desktop. So you can actually freely move independent apps, really taking advantage of that large screen, that large resolution. And this is definitely going to be interesting for a lot of people who are doing a lot of multitasking stuff, where you can actually integrate a whole bunch of different windows and move them freely and manipulate them to be as productive as possible. Now, one big hardware change on the Note 4 has to do with its new heart rate monitor at the back. It's the same monitor as we saw in the Galaxy S5, and it works very well. It's a little bit finicky sometimes, but in terms of, for the most part, it does a pretty good job of working coincide with the S Health app to get you an accurate read on your heart rate. The Note 4 also has those features that we saw last year on the Note 3 and on the S5, which is regarding the air view and gesture controls that you can basically enable to do different things on the app, such as basically look at your notifications by waving your hand over the phone when it's off. You can obviously do a whole bunch of things in terms of viewing and hovering your finger over the phone, where you can magnify the view. And it also has Smart Stay mode, which monitors your head and eyes to make sure you're viewing the screen, and if you're not, it'll actually turn off the screen. Now, in terms of the operating system that run in behind these two phones, we obviously have iOS 8 on the iPhone 6 Plus side and KitKat 4.4 on the Note 4 side. Now, we do have Samsung's skin on top of Android. The TouchWiz interface, which is certainly not a bad interface. It's very convenient to access most of your common use settings such as brightness and Wi-Fi, and you can obviously customize different portions over here to get better control over your phone in a more convenient way. There's a whole bunch of different features that TouchWiz offers, and obviously you can hopefully root this device to get a more pure Android experience, but sometimes you do feel that there is a little bit of a disconnect on the Note 4 and most Samsung products, because Samsung wants to do one thing with TouchWiz and they have a whole bunch of pre-installed apps, and Google wants to do another thing with their Android-based devices. So sometimes you have that discontinuity, and that's one thing I do like about the iPhone 6 Plus is where Apple controls both the hardware and software, so you get a very seamless, harmonious experience that works beautifully with each other. Now, in terms of internal memory for media and things like that, there is no internal expansibility on the iPhone 6 Plus. You basically have to get the 16, 64, and 128 gigabyte versions. On the other hand, the Note 4 does have user expandable memory thanks to its micro XP expansion slot, so you can upgrade whatever model you get by 128 gigabytes. Now, connectivity features on these two devices are fairly similar. They both have the latest generation of LTE network connectivity for most international networks. They both have dual band AC Wi-Fi compatibility for the latest generation Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, as well as NFC. Now, NFC is universally accepted on the Note 4, but it's a little bit more specific with the Apple iOS system. It's just the way that they've set it up. They both have their own way for you to eliminate your wallet by using either Google Wallet on the Note 4 side or Apple Pay on the Apple iPhone 6 side. Now, Apple Pay hasn't been really proven right now in terms of fully immersion in the marketplace, so most people don't accept it, and officially it hasn't even rolled out yet. Google Wallet is still being developed, and more vendors around the world are going to start accepting it, hopefully in the near future. So if you're planning on getting either of these phones, they will basically have that feature for you to eliminate your wallet. Two other features I like about the Note 4 is that it has a built-in IR blaster, which I use quite a bit to control my TVs, and it works great as a universal remote, as well as the USB on-the-go features where you can basically plug in most USB storage devices and transfer data back and forth. I pretty much use that feature on a day-to-day basis, and it's a real asset. Now, moving forward, the big thing these days about any smartphone is that it has to have a killer camera, and both of them have killer cameras in their both regards. The Samsung Galaxy Note 4 has a brand new front-facing camera that's 3.7 megapixel. It has an ultra-wide mode for selfies at 120 degrees of field of view. It also has the ability to actually take photos using the heart rate monitor at the back, making selfies a little bit more easier to take. The 1.3 megapixel 720p FaceTime camera on the iPhone 6 Plus hasn't really changed from the last generation of iPhone, and it's certainly due for an update. And in terms of the front-facing camera, we definitely have a clear winner over here on the Samsung Galaxy Note side. Now, turning over the cameras and revealing the rear-facing cameras, on the iPhone 6 Plus, we have an excellent 8 megapixel camera with optical stabilization as a brand new feature for the 6 Plus. It has a large sensor with phase detection autofocusing, very fast in terms of both photos and video focusing. In terms of the video capabilities, it can do 1080p at 60 frames per second and a very impressive 240 frames per second at 720p, which is excellent for slow motion. On the Note 4 side, it has pretty much a very similar sensor and camera as the Samsung Galaxy S5, 16 megapixels, which is absolutely insane in terms of resolution, 4K videos at 30 frames per second recording. It also has 720p, 120 frames per second. Unfortunately, not as high as slow motion as on the 6 Plus, but definitely not bad. But one big inclusion over here is optical stabilization on the Note 4. So that's definitely going to make photos and videos look a lot more smoother, a lot more clearer in any lighting condition. And optical stabilization is excellent for low light because of the fact that the lens moves independently of your hand and phone movements. You can definitely get more steadier, sharper looking images in low light. Now let's go ahead and take the time to actually look at the image quality differences between both the photos and videos of these two phones. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is obviously the big one, which is battery life. Starting with the iPhone 6 Plus has a excellent, almost 3,000 milliamp hour battery. It's actually 2915 milliamp hours to be exact. It is non-removable. It has an excellent performance. I've been using this phone for almost a month now and consistently getting at least a day and a half, sometimes even 2 days with the phone. So very fantastic for people who are heavy-duty users. Now, the Note 4, it is a brand new phone. I haven't had a lot of time with it. It does have a larger 3220 milliamp hour battery, which certainly is going to give you probably a little bit of a slighter edge on the battery performance compared to the 6 Plus, especially if you're using its power saving modes, which has extensive capabilities to expand your battery life. And from my early experience right now, I'm at least matching the performance that I get on the 6 Plus, if not better. And as the battery stabilizes, I'll probably get more consistent results. I'm not a heavy duty user, so I don't watch a lot of videos all the time, and I'm not on the phone like 24/7, but I am using it quite a bit for most of my general things that I do. Now, keep in mind that this is still a Samsung phone, so if you take a look at the back, you can remove the battery and get newer batteries, or if you're a heavy duty user and you go on lots of trips that don't have power available to you all the time, you can just buy a whole bunch of these Samsung batteries and pretty much never need to charge potentially. The other cool thing about the technology in the battery interface and on the Note 4, a huge feature, is its new rapid charging technology, which will get you from 0% to 50% in 30 minutes. And I've experienced this. Is pretty incredible. Really handy feature. Hopefully it won't damage the battery in any way in terms of long-term use, but definitely a handy feature for those of you on the go all the time. But other than that, guys, if you have any questions about anything I talked about in this video, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. There's a lot of different aspects of each of these phones that we can go into pretty much all day talking about. Now, the key thing over here is you have to go out and try the phones for yourself. And look at the individual advantages and disadvantages of each of the phones. Now, certainly the Note 4 in terms of standout feature kind of comes on top of the iPhone 6 Plus right now, mainly because Samsung had one-upped in terms of all the different technical aspects. But the iPhone 6 Plus is certainly a extremely well-built device. I've used it for almost a month now, and I've really had a great time with it. I think it's a phone that you can use every day, and certainly something that's usable for people that want a larger screen display. The Samsung Note 4 is the highest quality, the most technically advanced smartphone that's currently available right now. So if you want the latest and greatest, obviously you might want to go for that Note 4, but definitely take the iPhone 6 Plus into consideration because it's certainly a well-built, well-engineered, and even well-designed piece of kit. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any specific questions at all about anything I talked about, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you liked the video, and check out our other series of comparison videos. We're also comparing the Note 4 against the Samsung Galaxy S5, which is kind of a little brother to the Note 4. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. But other than that, guys, thank you again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.